Family Feud. Thanksgiving blow-up leads to shocking confession. I worked 80 weeks to support my family. But at Thanksgiving, my dad told me you're a disappointment. I couldn't believe what I heard next. Alright, here goes. Buckle up because this is going to get raw and real. My name is Mara, and I'm 36 years old. My entire life has unfolded in Evansville, Indiana, a place where the relentless Midwestern charm wraps around you like a suffocating blanket. If you've ever been stuck in a small town, you know how the church bells relentlessly chime every Sunday, a constant reminder of the unchanging rhythm of life, and how everyone is entangled in everyone else's business. In a place like this, you don't need a social media feed to know everyone's deepest secrets. And trust me, secrets were plenty in my family. And when it comes to family, specifically my dad, Doug, well, he's been a constant source of tension, a low-grade hum of anxiety that's vibrated through my life for as long as I can remember. He worked at the same steel plant for over 40 grueling years. The man was a workhorse, and that's the only language he spoke. Emotions, or God forbid, vulnerability, were foreign concepts. His way of parenting was tough love, heavy on the tough, excruciatingly light on the love. Then there's my mom, Helen. Emotionally, I don't think she ever knew how to be anything other than what my dad molded her into. A housewife whose sole purpose was to not make waves, to exist quietly in his orbit. I'm the middle kid, perpetually sandwiched between Carl, who went on to become a hotshot lawyer in Indianapolis before inevitably imploding, again, and Bella, a whirlwind of drama and attention-seeking behavior. I, on the other hand, never got into trouble, never talked back, always strived to be the good one. And yet, despite all my efforts, I always felt like the least important person in my family, invisible almost. Fast forward to last Thanksgiving. This is where everything finally reached a boiling point. The pressure cooker of my life finally exploding. You see, by then, I'd been working myself to the bone, pulling relentless 80-hour weeks as a nurse at St. Vincent's, desperately trying to hold my family together. I'd recently taken a managerial position in there, which meant even more calls in the middle of the night, even more responsibility. But I took it because that's what I do. And the rock, the dependable one. My husband, Sam, is a carpenter, a good man, but work is always uncertain. Some months he thrives, other months, well, let's just say we've had to get creative with our bills, juggling payments and sacrificing comforts. On top of that, we've got 2 kids, Noah, who's 10, and Sophie, who's 7, both wonderful, bright, and endlessly demanding. Let's just say it wasn't easy. I felt like I was constantly drowning in a sea of obligations. I did what I had to do because that's what being a parent is, right? And despite everything, despite the exhaustion, the stress, the financial strain, a tiny sliver of hope flickered within me. Disappointment had been a constant companion. I knew it was a long shot, but I still held on to the faint hope that maybe, just maybe, I could finally win his approval. I've been trying to win his approval since I was old enough to know what approval meant, but I kept pushing, kept working, thinking that if I just did enough, maybe he'd finally notice me. Maybe he'd finally see my worth. So here we are, Thanksgiving last year. I'd just finished a grueling 12-hour shift at the hospital. My hair still damp from the quick shower I managed to squeeze in before heading over to my parents' house. I was dead on my feet, every muscle screaming in protest. But it was Thanksgiving, and no matter how tired I wasn't going to miss it. Not after everything I had been through, not after all the sacrifices I had made. I thought, maybe this year, it'll be different. Maybe this year he'll finally see me. As soon as I walked through the door, the smell of turkey and mashed potatoes hit me like a wave, overwhelming my senses. My mom was, as usual, running around like a chicken with her head cut off, frantically making sure everything was perfect. A martyr to the holiday spirit. My dad was planted in his usual spot in front of the TV, beer in hand, watching the football game with Carl, his golden child, his pride and joy. I felt my stomach twist into a knot of familiar anxiety. I had to work a double shift, I said, trying to keep my tone light, trying to diffuse any potential tension before it could ignite. Always an excuse. He muttered under his breath, barely audible, but perfectly clear. Hey mom, need help with anything? I offered, though I knew she'd already done everything herself, meticulously arranging every detail. Oh no, Mara honey, you go sit down. You look tired, she said, though the way she said it wasn't exactly sympathetic. It was more of an observation, a detached assessment of my weary state. I grabbed a glass of water and leaned against the counter, watching her flit round the kitchen, a silent observer in her carefully orchestrated chaos. Wondering if this is how my whole life would play out, always standing on the sidelines, helping, but never really seen, never truly appreciated. Carl, of course, was always the star of the show, the one my dad doted on, the one who could do no wrong. Carl caught me looking and flashed that smug smile that always made me feel like he knew something I didn't. some secret to navigating this dysfunctional family dynamic. Mara, what's new at the hospital? Still fixing broken bones and handing out Tylenol, he said, his tone laced with that familiar smugness. I forced a smile, fighting back the familiar sting of his condescension. Something like that. Bella arrived shortly after, a talking hurricane of manufactured trauma. She's the type of person who makes chaos look effortless, who thrives on attention, whether positive or negative. Sorry I'm late. Traffic was a nightmare, she declared, bursting through the door like she'd been personally inconvenienced by the entire city. Traffic? Yeah, sure. Bella lives 20 minutes away, tops. My mom rushed over to her, cooing over her kids and asking if she needed anything, showering her with the attention I always craved. I tried to keep my cool as we all sat down to eat, a forced cheerfulness masking underlying tension. Small talk floated around the table, superficial and meaningless. Carl bragging about his new house in Indianapolis, Bella complaining about her ex-husband and how he was behind on child support again. Always the victim, always the center of attention. I just sat there, a silent observer, the invisible woman. And then my dad cleared his throat, the sound cutting through the forced conviviality like a knife. You know I have been thinking, he announced, his voice heavy with significance. Everyone fell silent, the cheerful chatter abruptly ceasing. Because when Doug speaks, everyone listens, whether they want to or not. My heart did this stupid thing where it leaped into my throat, a mix of dread and a desperate, foolish hope that maybe, just maybe, he was about to say something that would make all the exhaustion and sacrifice feel worth it. I've been thinking, he continued, looking directly at me, his gaze unwavering, that you've really wasted your life. Excuse me, I managed to stammer, the shock reverberating through me. You heard me, he said, leaning back in his chair, his expression hard, unforgiving. You're 36 years old, and what do you have to show for it? Working yourself to death at a hospital for chump change. Carl's got a real career, a respectable profession. Hell, even Bella managed to get her act together after that mess of a divorce. I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room, leaving me gasping for breath. My mom's eyes darted nervously on the table, avoiding my gaze, focusing intently on carving a turkey, desperate to diffuse the escalating tension. Carl and Bella exchanged knowing looks, a silent communication passing between them, a shared understanding of my perceived failure. I am working, Dad, I said, my voice barely above a whisper, trying to defend myself against his brutal assessment. I'm a nurse, I take care of people, I make a difference. He snorted, dismissive and cruel. You're still struggling, still living paycheck to paycheck. Nurses don't make enough to support a family. You should have done better. Better, I repeated, my voice rising despite my best efforts, anger beginning to simmer beneath the surface. I'm working 80 hours a week, trying to keep a roof over my family's head. What more can I possibly do? My dad snorted again, even louder this time. Maybe if you hadn't married a guy who can't hold down a real job, you wouldn't have to work so hard. My jaw clenched, every muscle in my body tensing. I could feel the anger boiling inside me, threatening to erupt. Don't you dare talk about Sam like that, I snapped, my voice shaking with barely contained rage. He's doing his best. He's a good man, and he's a damn good father. His best isn't good enough, my dad said, his voice as cold as ice, devoid of any compassion. You should have married someone who could actually provide for you, someone who could give you the life you deserve. And that was it. Something inside me snapped, a breaking point I hadn't even realized I was approaching. All the years of trying to prove myself to him, of working my ass off to gain even an ounce of his approval, it all came crashing down in that moment, shattering into a million pieces. I'm done, I said, standing up from the table, my whole body shaking with a mixture of rage and exhaustion. I've spent my entire life trying to make you proud, but nothing I ever do is good enough for you. Is it? You've always treated me like I'm nothing compared to Carl or Bella, like I'm some kind of disappointment. Well, guess what, Dad, I'm done. I'm done trying to be the doctor you want me to be. I'm done letting you treat me like a disappointment just because I didn't live the life you think I should have. I could feel my face flush with heat, but there was no turning back now. Years of pent-up frustration poured out of me, a torrent of emotions I could no longer contain. I didn't care that it was Thanksgiving. I didn't care that my kids, my siblings, were all there, witnessing my outburst. I didn't care about anything except the fact that I was finally saying what I kept buried for so long, finally unleashing the truth that had been suffocating me for years. You sit there, I continued, pointing at my dad, my finger trembling with barely contained anger. But you don't have a clue. You don't know what it's like to work in a hospital during a pandemic, to witness death and suffering every single day, to come home so exhausted I can barely stand. You don't know what it's like to choose between groceries or paying the electric bill, to constantly worry about how you're going to make ends meet. You don't know how hard Sam works to keep us afloat, how much he sacrifices to our family. And yet, you have the nerve to sit there and judge me, to tell me I've wasted my life. I'm the one holding this family together, I'm the one who's always there for everyone. And you treat me like I'm nothing. My voice cracked on that last part. And for a second, I thought I might start crying, the weight of my emotions threatening to overwhelm me. I stood there, bracing myself for his reaction. I half expected him to stand up and tell me to leave, to unleash his full wrath upon me. But for once, he just sat there, staring at me with a strange expression, a mix of shock and something that almost resembled regret. Maybe he realized he'd gone too far. Maybe he finally saw the damage he'd inflicted. I don't know. My mom stood frozen by the kitchen counter, her hand still holding the gravy ladle, her face pale like she had just witnessed something awful, something unspeakable. I had never raised my voice like that before, not in front of the whole family, not in such a raw and vulnerable way. But I was tired, bone-achingly tired of always being the invisible one, of being the responsible one who never got any credit, while Carl's successes and Bella's dramas always took center stage. And more than anything, I was tired of constantly feeling like I was never enough for my dad, like I was perpetually falling short of his expectations. He cleared his throat, but his voice wasn't as steady as usual, the usual booming authority replaced with a hesitant uncertainty. That's not what I meant, he began, choosing his words carefully, measuring each syllable. You're taking this all wrong, you're twisting my words. Oh really? I shot back, my voice sharp, laced with sarcasm. Because from where I'm standing, it sure sounds like you meant exactly what you said. My dad opened his mouth to respond, to launch into another tirade, but my mom, bless her heart, finally spoke, her voice trembling. Just stop, she pleaded quietly, her eyes filled with unshed tears. Please, Doug, just stop. My dad turned to her, surprised by her sudden intervention. My mom almost never stood up to him, almost never challenged his authority. Helen, this isn't enough, she said again, louder this time, her eyes flashing with a newfound defiance. This isn't about you being right, it's about Ma, and she's right. We've all been so hard on her, we've all taken her for granted, and I'm ashamed of it. My mom, admitting this, acknowledging my pain, was something I had never expected, something I had only dreamed of. She continued, her voice gaining strength with each word. She's worked harder than any of us. She's sacrificed so much for this family, and she deserves better from all of us, especially from you. My dad's face turned red, his jaw clenched tight, but he didn't say anything. He just looked down at his plate, anger simmering beneath the surface. For a second, I thought he might explode, unleash his fury on my mom for daring to challenge him. But he stayed quiet, the silence hanging heavy in the air. I didn't know what to say. I was completely caught off guard by my mom's unexpected defense. This was something deeper, more complicated than I could have ever imagined. I wasn't expecting this. I didn't even know how to process it. My mom turned to me, her eyes filled with regret, her voice soft with remorse. Mara, honey, I'm so sorry, she said, her voice thick with emotion. I should have defended you sooner. I should have stood up to your father years ago. I've seen how much you've been doing, how much you've sacrificed. And I should have said something a long time ago. You're an amazing mother, you're an incredible nurse, and you're a good daughter. Don't ever let anyone, including your father, make you feel like you're not. I stood there, frozen, tears streaming down my face. Her words, her unexpected support, were like a bomb to my wounded soul, a validation I had craved for so long. Well, this has been fun, Bella interjected, rolling her eyes, her voice dripping with sarcasm. But I think I have had enough of this little therapy session. Some of us don't have time to sit around and cry about family drama. She stood up abruptly, grabbing her purse and signaling to her kids. Come on, kids, let's go. This is just a bunch of BS. She turned to Carl, a pleading look in her eyes. Carl, are you coming? Bella, always trying to deflect, always minimizing my feelings, always needing to be the center of attention. Bella, not now. Carl snapped, his voice surprisingly firm. This isn't about you. This is about Mara. And Mara isn't playing the victim. She's finally speaking her truth. Bella was clearly taken aback by Carl's rebuke. She wasn't used to him taking sides, especially not against her. The shock was written all over her face. The surprise of not being the center of attention evident. This whole family has been blind to what Mara has been going through. Carl continued, his voice filled with a mixture of anger and regret. I know I've been caught up in my own life, and I'm sorry for that. But we've all taken her for granted. We've all expected her to be the strong one, without ever acknowledging the sacrifices she's made. My jaw almost dropped. Carl, the golden child, the one who could do no wrong, acknowledging that I've been the one doing the heavy lifting, admitting that he'd been selfish and unsupportive. I didn't know what to say. I was completely speechless. Bella huffed, clearly frustrated by the turn of events, but she didn't say anything else. She just grabbed her coat and stormed out of the house, slamming the door behind her, her dramatic exit leaving a palpable tension in the air. Carl sat back down, his gaze meeting mine. Mara, I'm sorry, he said sincerely, his eyes filled with remorse. I've been selfish, I've been oblivious, and I should have been more supportive. You've been carrying so much weight, and I haven't given you the credit you deserve. I didn't know what to do with all this, all the sudden attention, all the unexpected support. It was overwhelming, disorienting, and strangely comforting all at the same time. I appreciate that, I said quietly, sitting back down, the initial shock beginning to subside. But this isn't just about me. This is about all of us, about how we treat each other. Carl nodded, acknowledging the truth in my words. But my dad still hadn't said a word. He just sat there, staring blankly at his plate, his face a mask of conflicting emotions. I turned to him, my voice softer now, pleading with him to understand. Dad, I'm not asking for a miracle. I'm not expecting you to suddenly change overnight. I just want you to understand that I'm trying, that I've been trying my whole life to make you proud. But I need you to see that I'm enough as I am, that I don't need to be someone else to earn your love. My dad finally looked up at me, his eyes wet with unshed tears, his face etched with a lifetime of unspoken emotions. I had never seen him like this, so vulnerable, so exposed. Mara, he said, his voice barely a whisper, filled with a raw emotion I had never heard before. I'm sorry. Those 3 words felt like a bomb going off inside me, a seismic shift in the landscape of our relationship. The man who never apologized, the man who never admitted he was wrong, was finally uttering the words I had longed to hear for so long. I never wanted you to feel like you weren't good enough, he continued, his voice shaking with emotion. I didn't know how else to push you, how else to motivate you. I thought if I was hard on you, it would make you stronger. It would prepare you for the harsh realities of life. But I see now that I just pushed you away, that I just wounded you with my words. I swallowed hard, the tears threatening to spill over again. I've waited my whole life to hear those words. And now that I didn't know what to do with them, how to process the weight of his confession. I'm proud of you, Mara, he said, his voice filled with a sincerity I had never doubted, always dismissed. You've done more than any of us could have ever asked for. You've sacrificed so much for your family. And I'm sorry I didn't tell you that sooner. I'm sorry I didn't show you how much I appreciated you. I just sat there, letting the weight of his words wash over me, feeling the dam of my emotions finally break, releasing a flood of tears. For the first time in my life, I felt seen by him, truly seen. Not as a disappointment, but as a daughter he was proud of. The rest of the evening passed in a quiet, surreal haze. Bella didn't come back, and frankly, I was glad for that. Carl and my mom kept the conversation light, steering clear of any potentially sensitive topics. And my dad didn't say much after his apology, but that was okay. We didn't need to say anything else. The air felt lighter. The tension dissipated, replaced with a fragile sense of peace. Later that night, after the kids were asleep and the house was quiet, I sat on the couch, replaying the evening in my mind, trying to make sense of everything that had happened. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't a fairy tale ending, but it was real and it was progress. For the first time in years, I felt like maybe, just maybe, things could be different, that maybe we could finally start to heal the wounds that had festered for so long. As the weight of the day started to sink in, I couldn't stop replaying my dad's apology in my head. I'm proud of you. Those 4 words, the ones I have been chasing for so long, the ones I desperately longed to hear, were finally out in the open, hanging in the air like a fragile promise. And yet, despite the relief, despite the validation, I didn't know how to feel. Shouldn't I have felt some sense of relief, of closure? Shouldn't the weight I've been carrying for decades feel lighter, less suffocating? But it didn't, not exactly. The truth is, after so many years of hell, after so many years of my dad tearing me down, part of me didn't know how to exist without that burden, without that constant feeling of inadequacy. The kids were asleep, the house was quiet, and my thoughts were spiraling. My phone buzzed on the coffee table, pulling me out of the spiral I was heading into. I picked it up to see a text from Bella. Sorry about earlier. Didn't mean to make it worse. I stared at the message for a long time, the words blowing through my tears. Typical Bella, half an apology, always deflecting responsibility, always trying to minimize her actions. That's always been her style, and I doubted she would ever truly change. But for once, I didn't have the energy to engage, to argue, to try to explain my feelings to someone who would never understand. It's fine, I texted back, my fingers heavy with exhaustion. Talk later. Sam stayed quiet throughout the entire dinner, keeping his head down, trying not to stir the pot. I knew he was always walking on eggshells around my family, afraid of saying the wrong thing, afraid of triggering my dad's anger. It wasn't his fault. Of course, he was just trying to protect me, to shield me from the negativity. But sometimes I wish he would stand up for me more, that he would challenge my dad's behavior, that he would show him that I was worthy of respect. It wasn't his fault. I knew he loved me, and that was enough. The next morning, after a fitful night of sleep filled with fragmented dreams and anxious thoughts, I woke up feeling drained, both physically and emotionally. The emotional high from the night before had faded, leaving behind only the dull ache of exhaustion. Sam was already up, bustling around the kitchen, making breakfast for the kids. I lay there for a minute, staring at the ceiling, trying to summon the energy to get out of bed to face another day. Life goes on, I thought, trying to muster some semblance of motivation. I dragged myself out of bed and wandered into the kitchen, where Sam flashed me a warm smile, his eyes filled with concern. "Morning," he said, flipping pancakes with practiced ease. "How are you feeling?" "Tired," I admitted, my voice raspy from lack of sleep. "But I'm okay. I will be anyway." He nodded, handing a plate of pancakes to Sophie, his expression thoughtful. "I'm proud of you, Ma," he said quietly, his eyes filled with admiration. "You stood up for yourself. You finally said what needed to be said." That took a lot of courage. Sam wasn't one for big emotional declarations. He showed his love through his actions, through his unwavering support. But his words, his quiet affirmation, meant the world to me. "Thanks," I whispered, feeling a lump form in my throat. I didn't realize how much I needed to hear that from him too. How much I needed his validation. I leaned over and kissed him on the cheek, a silent expression of my gratitude, before sitting down at the table with the kids. As we ate breakfast, Noah peppered me with questions about the hospital, his endless curiosity, a welcome distraction, and Sophie asked if we could get a puppy, her bright eyes filled with hopeful anticipation. It was comforting in a way to be surrounded by the chaos of my kids, the innocence of balm to my wounded soul. They were a reminder that despite everything, despite the drama with my family, I had built something good, something strong, something worth fighting for with Sam. Around noon, my phone rang. It was my mom. I hesitated before answering, a knot of anxiety tightening in my stomach. I wasn't sure I was ready to talk to her yet, to dissect the events of the previous day, but she just kept trying. Her persistence, a familiar reminder of her unwavering presence in my life. "Hey Mom," I said, trying to keep my tone light, trying to gauge her mood. "Ma, hi," she said, sounding more frantic than usual, her voice shaky and filled with a nervous energy. I wanted to talk to you about last night. I didn't sleep at all," she continued, her voice trembling with emotion. "I keep thinking about what you said, about how you've been feeling, and I'm so sorry. Ma, I'm so incredibly sorry. Ma," she added, "I've been such a coward. I should have stood up to your father years ago. I should have protected you from his harsh words, from his unfair expectations. But I was always too afraid of making waves, too afraid of disrupting the peace." Hearing her like this, so raw, so vulnerable, was unsettling, a stark contrast to the composed, compliant woman I had always known, even when she wasn't saying what I wanted to hear. I now saw how hard she always tried, but now it was like she was finally seeing things for what they really were, finally acknowledging the pain she had inadvertently caused. "Mom, it's okay," I said softly, my voice filled with compassion. "I appreciate what you said last night. It means a lot to me." She let out a shaky breath, a release of years of pent-up guilt and regret. I want you to know I'm going to do better. I'm going to try to be more supportive, to be more present in your life. I don't want you to feel like you're alone in this anymore, because you're not. You'll never be alone again." Tears welled up in my eyes again, the emotions threatening to overwhelm me once more. I had to bite my lip to keep them from spilling over, to maintain some semblance of composure. "Thank you, Mom," I managed to whisper, my voice thick with emotion. "That means a lot, more than you know." There was a long pause on the other end of the line, and I could hear her sniffling quietly, her silent tears speaking volumes. "Well, your dad is still processing everything," she said, her voice slightly stronger now. "I know he didn't mean to hurt you, but that doesn't make it right. He's stubborn, he always has been, but I think deep down he knows he's been unfair to you, that he's treated you in a way he shouldn't have." I nodded, even though she couldn't see me, acknowledging the truth in her words. "I know," I said softly. It's going to take time, I think, for all of us to heal the wounds, to rebuild the trust, to create a new dynamic." "You're right," she said, her voice filled with a newfound determination. "It's going to take time, but we can do it. I just want you to know we're here for you, both your dad and I. We love you, Ma, more than words can say, and we're proud of you. We always have been. I'm sorry I didn't say it enough. I'm sorry I didn't show you how much we care." That was it. A final crack in the wall I had built around my heart, the last vestige of resistance crumbling beneath the weight of her words. I let the tears fall freely now, not caring if I sounded like a mess on the phone, allowing myself to fully feel the release, the catharsis of finally hearing the validation I had craved for so long. "I love you, Mom," I whispered, my voice choked with emotion, my heart overflowing with gratitude. "I love you too, honey," she said, her voice thick with emotion, her words a soothing balm to my wounded soul. "We'll talk more soon, okay? We'll figure this out together." "Talk soon," I said, hanging up the phone, my hand trembling. After I hung up, I sat there for a long time, staring at the phone in my hand, the silence of the house amplifying the turmoil within me. Part of me wanted to call Sam to tell him about the conversation with my mom, to share the weight of my emotions with him. But I didn't, not yet. I needed to sit with it for a while, to allow the emotions to settle, to fully absorb the impact of her words. The next few days passed in a blur of work and family life, a chaotic mix of long shifts at the hospital, demanding kids, and mountain bills. I went back to my normal routine, waking up early, getting the kids ready for school, heading to the hospital for another long shift, caring for patients, dealing with emergencies, and trying to make a difference in the lives of others. But something had shifted inside me, a subtle change in perspective, a newfound sense of peace. I didn't feel as heavy as weighed down by the past. The burden of my father's disapproval no longer weighing me down. I wasn't fixed. My relationship with my dad wasn't magically healed, but I felt lighter, as if I could finally breathe again, as if I had finally shed a layer of my former self. One evening, about a week after Thanksgiving, as I was putting the kids to bed, I got a text from my dad. Just one line, but it was enough to stop me in my tracks, to send a shiver down my spine. "Can we talk? I miss you." I hadn't expected this. Not so soon. Not after so many years of silence. I wasn't sure if I was ready, if I was strong enough to face him again, to confront the years of hurt and disappointment. But I knew I couldn't ignore it. I couldn't run away from the opportunity to heal, to rebuild. I took a deep breath, steadied my trembling hands, and texted him back. Okay, when I walked into the diner the next day, my dad was already sitting in a booth, his hands wrapped around a cup of coffee, his gaze fixed on the window. He looked different, older, more vulnerable than I remembered, as if the weight of his regrets had finally caught up to him. I sat down across from him, giving him a small smile, my heart pounding in my chest. "Hi, Dad," I said softly, breaking the uncomfortable silence. There was an awkward pause, a palpable tension hanging in the air, both of us unsure how to start, how to navigate this new, uncharted territory. But then my dad cleared his throat and spoke, his voice hesitant, uncertain. "I've been thinking a lot," he said, his voice quieter than I was used to, "about what you said, about how I've treated you." I nodded slowly, waiting for him to continue, bracing myself for whatever he was about to say. I didn't mean to make you feel like you weren't good enough," he said, his hands fidgeting with the edge of the table, his eyes filled with a mixture of shame and regret. "I was just scared. I thought if I pushed you, if I was hard on you, it would make you stronger. It would prepare you for the harsh realities of life. But all I did was push you away. All I did was hurt you with my words, with my expectations." I swallowed hard, the tears welling up in my eyes again, threatening to spill over. I didn't know what to say. I was overwhelmed by the sincerity in his voice, by the rawness of his emotions. "I'm sorry, Mara," he said, his voice breaking, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I'm so damn sorry." I took a deep breath, trying to compose myself, to find the right words. "I know, Dad," I said softly, my voice filled with compassion. "And I'm sorry too. I know you've always done what you thought was best, that you were just trying to protect me, to prepare me for the world. But I need you to understand that I'm not Carl, I'm not Bella, I'm me and I'm okay. You never give me a chance to find my voice. But now you'll see that has to be enough for this family, and has to be enough for you." For a moment I saw the man beneath the tough exterior, the vulnerable human Ian who had been hidden for so long by layers of pride and fear. "You are enough," he said as a tear rolled down his cheek, and his voice broke. It was his breaking point to finally put in the effort. I've been too blind to see it for so long. It was my turn. He continued by saying, "I am glad you made me see it by pushing back. But you've always been enough, Ma." I heard it. It was now an emotion to me for once, and then peace. My heart clenched at those words, at the vulnerability in his voice, at the sheer force of his admission. I'd waited so many years to hear him say that, to receive his validation, to feel his love. All the nights I lay awake wondering if I'd ever be good enough for him, if anything I did would ever make him proud, flashed before my eyes. The anger, the resentment, the sadness all began to fade, replaced with something akin to understanding, something approaching forgiveness. I paused, searching for the right words, trying to articulate the complex mix of emotions swirling within me. "I don't need you to approve of every choice I've made. I don't need you to agree with everything I do. I just need you to accept that this is my life, that I'm doing the best I can, that I'm trying to make a difference in the world." He looked down at his hands, his gaze filled with remorse. "I do accept that, Mara," he said quietly, his voice barely audible. "And I'm sorry I haven't shown it. I'm sorry for all the times I made you feel like you weren't good enough. You've always been the glue holding this family together, the one who always puts everyone else first. And I've taken that for granted. You're stronger than I ever gave you credit for. You're more resilient than I ever imagined." It wasn't easy hearing these words from him now, after so many years of silence, after so many years of feeling invisible. But they meant everything. They were the validation I had craved for so long. "Thank you," I whispered, my voice thick with emotion, my eyes filled with tears. That's all I ever wanted to hear. That's all I ever needed. We sat there for a while in silence, both of us sipping our coffee and letting the conversation settle between us, allowing the emotions to dissipate, to make way for something new, something stronger. Healing, I realized, had begun. It would be a slow, gradual process, but it had begun, and that was enough. After